housekeeping for those that don't know. Restrooms are right around the corner, so you just go through this door and hang a right, and they're over there. We do have a code of conduct. Please be cool with one another. If anyone is not being cool with you, just please come and see us, and we'll make sure that they are. Outside of that, I would like to also give a shout out to Barry, who created our new awesome logo here. So, yeah. So thank you for that. We're stylish, not people who have problems with Photoshop, so that's nice. Yeah, and then also a big shout out to our newest co-organizer, Sandra, who has helped us as well. So if you would like to come up and say a few words.
So I don't. Just really short. So thank you again for being here at Mozilla. I'm Sandra Persing. I work at Mozilla. I do global developer events. You might have seen me on Twitter talking about all these roadshows I did back in 2017. And this year we're putting the Mozilla brand everywhere, so it's associated with WebVR. So that's hopefully working in many ways. I think I was participating in this meetup last time, and I liked it so much I actually joined as an organizer. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Just a few quick things again. Remember, there is a code of conduct here at the event. We do this and we say this out loud every single time. Just be cool to each other, but there is a full document on our meetup page. If you have any issues, you can talk to me directly. Just pull me aside, and we'll deal with it. So thank you. Again, bathrooms are in the corner, and if you need anything, just let me know. We're here to help. And without too much ado, I'm just going to introduce Tony to say a few words.
Thanks again, Sandra. Can you guys hear me? Good? So, Sandra, thank you for hosting. Karen, Bitmovin, thanks for being a sponsor. Samsung, thank you for being a sponsor, Samsung Internet. That was Damon, our co-organizer, who got us all wrangled here. Where are you, Damon? Back there. Another program note, if you don't know where to throw your food, there are bins, like right behind that bar there. I guess people were just leaving stuff everywhere. So if you grab a bite, just stick them in the bins behind the bar. All right, cool. So I'm Tony Parisi. I work at Unity, doing things around brand advertising and XR. This is the WebXR meetup. It was born about 4 years ago, just under 4 years ago, as the WebVR meetup. It actually came out of some conversations with Mozilla and Google around then about extending browsers to get them to talk to Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, which was coming out. Since then, our scope has expanded beyond VR to also cover augmented and mixed reality, hence the transition to the letter X, which nobody knows what that means, right? Show of hands, who knows what XR means? That's one. See, we're fucked. Anyway, so sorry. Can you print that? Sorry about that. I know this is getting recorded. Anyway, I'll try and keep it PG rated. So thank you all for coming. We have a long slate of speakers today. We actually have 4 presenters that are doing formal talks. One of them is going to video in a little bit. And we also then have 2 lightning talks. And then we'll have time to socialize and network again at the end if we keep this thing marching. So I would like to introduce our first speaker, if you're ready. Where are you, Brandon? Okay, so back in the spring of 2014, where the ink was barely dry on the deal where Facebook acquired Oculus, I was at an event where I was introduced to Josh Carpenter and Vlad Vukicevic of Mozilla, and they said they were connecting an Oculus Rift to the Firefox browser. And I said, that sounds like a pretty good idea, because I've been working in the field of 3D and web stuff for a long time. Sounds great. Turns out they were also talking to our next speaker, Brandon Jones, and they had already been cooking this thing, and it's almost exactly 4 years ago now. And they showed up at a meetup, our WebGL meetup, a few months later, both having presented an API that could talk to VR HMDs from a web browser. No app store, no download, no install, no proprietary tool stack, no friction, no waiting. And 4 years later, we're almost ready to ship something, right, Brandon? Brandon's going to give you the lowdown on what's going on Chrome VR, Google's efforts on WebXR. Take it away, Brandon.
Thank you, Tony. All right, yeah, it has definitely, when Vlad and I started this, it was 4 years ago was April 2014. And my goodness, like, where does the time go when you're building these things? All right, cool. So yeah, Tony gave me a great introduction, but just to say it again, I'm Brandon Jones. I'm a software engineer at Google. I'm also the primary implementer of the Web, VR, and XR APIs in Chrome. Although these days I get a lot of help from a lot of other very talented people. And I'm the spec editor for the WebXR API. So today we're going to be talking about the WebXR API and why it's different from the WebVR API and why you care. So to start off, who here has used the WebVR API in any capacity? Awesome, cool, that's, thank you, Josh. I know you have. So that's great, and so most of you have some idea of what I'm talking about when I say, the Web VR API, and know, in the beginning we had that, beginning being 2014, and it was pretty good, more or less. I'm sure most of you have run into the fact that there's a few minor issues in the API. And honestly, as time went on, we found out that it could be a lot better. Now, the WebVR API did come around at a time when the Oculus DK1 and Google Cardboard were kind of the new hotness. And the ecosystem has moved on a little bit since then. And so as the devices that we're working on evolve, we need to evolve the APIs as well. I'm sorry, I just love that animation. And so, we're evolving the WebVR API into WebXR. So the high-level overview of WebXR is that it is not backwards compatible with WebVR, and that's very explicitly so. It's a little bit painful. It was painful for us to make that decision, but in the end, I think it's a really good thing. That being said, if you have a well-behaved WebVR app, it should port over pretty easily. Most of the concepts are the same. We're not introducing too many new nuts and bolts that you have to deal with. And there's some pretty well-defined mappings of saying, well, if you were doing this before, you can do this now. And all in all, it means that porting a WebVR app that's not doing something really weird should be a matter of days, not weeks or months. Now, the reason why we're doing this is largely because we want to future-proof the API. We want to future-proof it against newer hardware, newer ecosystems, newer patterns that software developers build up, and newer aspects of this whole, what we call the immersive web. We're very focused on virtual reality beforehand. Now we're seeing that augmented reality is a thing, and we don't want to leave it behind. We happen to get a cleaner API that goes along with it. We're going to be compatible with more devices. And we are introducing support for AR support, which is a weird way of saying it, and I will explain why in a little bit. Oh, yes, and I'm very happy that I got to add this slide since the last time I gave this talk. We're finding out that it's faster, too. One of my incredibly talented colleagues, Klaus, on the Chrome team, has been doing an amazing job doing some optimizations for Android, and he was able to, in Chrome, implement a method that reduced the number of times a texture needed to be copied from the point that you rendered it in WebGL to the point that it was shown on screen on a Daydream or Cardboard device. And this change alone gained us the ability to render about 50% more pixels than we were previously without any frame rate hit. And so we're able to then tune the API. Just because the API is shaped differently than WebVR was, it allows for this. And we're able to tune it so that if you port your WebVR content over, that content will run faster and look better in WebXR simply by virtue of using the new API. No content changes needed. So if you're like me, then you're the type that likes to see, big blocks of code samples and really dig into them and figure out how they all work. And we're not going to do any of that tonight because we just don't have the time. But if you want to see the actual code that goes into the APIs, you can go to either of these links, and I'll make sure that these slide decks are available online afterwards so you can dig this up. But in the meantime, I want to cover some high-level questions that we do get about the API and go into a couple of deep dives about one or two of the new features. So, as Tony was pointing out, or maybe I forget which of the introducers was bringing this up, but we've got this X in the name now. And a lot of people don't really understand what the X stands for. And the way I like to approach it, I heard some good alternatives shouted out, but the way that I like to approach it is that the X is a variable. It's like an X in algebra. It stands for whatever you want, your reality here. It can be VR, it can be AR, it can be MR, it can be anything on that spectrum in between. We want to cover it all. However, there's a great anecdote that came out of the OpenXR GDC presentation from Nick Whiting. And I was there in the room when this happened, so I can vouch for its authenticity. When they were naming the OpenXR API, somebody scribbled up on a whiteboard, well, hey, look, if you put a V on top of an A, it looks like an X, so we should call it OpenXR. And it was so stupid that it worked. And so that is like the legitimate genesis of the OpenXR name, and I love it, and I'm going to stick with that forevermore. So, speaking of OpenXR, what is the deal between OpenXR and WebXR? It feels like they should be related somehow, especially because we have OpenGL and WebGL, and those two are basically the same API. It's just one happens to live on the web. So it feels like there should be a similar relationship between these two APIs, and there's not. In fact, WebXR isn't based on any particular open or native API. It's more of just the commonalities between all of the native APIs that we can find. That said, they are similar because they do cover a lot of the same topics. But you shouldn't go into it expecting that if you implement something in OpenXR on native code, that you can just magically cross-compile it and it will work with WebXR. Now, given the confusion between the names here, it's a little unfortunate that there's that association, but I do expect that this will become less confusing as time goes on and the XR acronym catches on a little bit more. So what about AR? I mentioned support for AR support previously. We are working on AR support. We know that lots and lots of people want it. But in the interest of actually releasing something sometime soon, because I've been working on this for 4 years, we are not making it part of the initial WebXR API. There's still a little bit of development that needs to go into it. We're still figuring out what the right patterns are. We are, however, making sure that the API has all the right hooks for it, all the right entry points, so that when the AR features do come in, we're not redesigning the world, we're not breaking the API again. They'll be able to slot in pretty naturally, and it should be something that you can take your existing VR content and, you know, tweak a few flags and add a couple of new if statements, and now you're on track for AR. The focus for that is going to be on the mobile level AR first. We're not targeting Magic Leap, we're targeting more of AR Core, AR Kit level capabilities, because that's what's going to be in consumers' hands on a much wider scale initially. And to that end, we're going to start pretty simple. We're not exposing like every last environmental detection API that we can find. We're more focusing on what the minimum viable product is to create AR experiences that work in as many places as possible without assuming too much about how the underlying hardware is working. And then once we've got that in place, we'll start iterating on what we see as the more common functionality. So, excuse me. Wow. Moving on from that, I did want to take some time to go into a deeper dive on one feature that I'm really happy with how it's working out, and that's input in WebXR. So anybody who has done WebVR in the past knows that its input system is special. It definitely has its own challenges. It's based on the Gamepad API, which in and of itself is an API that isn't always the easiest thing to use. And it has some problems in that there's no indication how the buttons are laid out. Developers have to go in and test controller names for mappings. Controllers aren't guaranteed to to map things identically across browsers, although they do their best. Like, true story, I went in and did the initial implementation of the gamepad exposure one night. Like, it was literally just like 11 o'clock at night, and I'm just like, okay, well, sure, we'll just iterate through the axes and do all this. And then I find out months later that Microsoft and Mozilla apparently spent an awful lot of time doing painstaking recreations of the way that I was exposing it in Chrome just so they wouldn't break backwards compatibility. I'm like, yeah, I just iterated and did it, and it's kind of terrible that everybody's looking at whatever Brandon did, and that's the standard. That's not how the web works. And it's also worth noting that the way the Gamepad API works, there's no events that come out of it, and so there's certain things that happen in the browser, like playing back of audio or video, that require themselves to happen in what's called a user activation event. This is a click or a touch or something like that. And this is a security feature. You don't want to go to a page and have it just start blaring out audio automatically. So you have to actually interact with the page in some way before it can do that. But the Gamepad API didn't allow us to do that. So it was problematic for people who want to do video, which happens to be a case that we really care a lot about. So in WebXR, we're trying to fix this by introducing a unified ray-based input system. This borrows heavily from an API that my colleague Boris Smoos put together called Ray Input. But truth be told, we found that a lot of people were rebuilding this same pattern into their own applications. And if you've got 20 different people who are reinventing the same wheel, there's a chance that there's something to that, and we really should borrow it. So the basics is this. Every type of input that we know of in VR, you can produce a ray of some sort. Being a mathematical ray where it has an origin and a direction, it just says, I am pointing this way. If you have a controller, that ray is coming out of the tip of the controller. If you have a gaze-based system, it's coming out of the center of your head. And if you're doing Magic Window content where you're just looking at it on the screen, then the ray is just wherever you tapped on the screen going straight down into the environment. Similarly, everything that we look at has some concept of a primary action. Maybe it's a trigger, maybe it's a button, maybe it's a verbal command, who knows, but there is some action that you use to trigger basic primary functionality. So the basics of the system is when the primary action happens, we give you an event and say this is the ray that it happens at, and that's kind of the whole thing. It's really simple. And this event also happens to act as a user gesture, so it is something that you can use to begin playback of video and audio and that type of thing. As an example of some of the input, my hand is huge. As an example of some of the inputs that you get from this, when I'm holding this Oculus Touch controller, the ray that we would be giving you for any input just comes kind of straight out of the end because that's a fairly natural pointing direction. It roughly aligns with your index finger. And then what we call the grip matrix is basically just like if you're holding a physical object, then the origin for that transform should be right about the center of your palm, and the the negative z-axis should just kind of come straight up out of it. And this gives you a coordinate system foundation where, like, if you go into Blender and model a sword, you know exactly where you should model it so that it just shows up in the right spot in the user's hand every time. All right, let's hope the videos here work. So here's some examples of the system in action. This is recorded from a Daydream system. I've got the little 3DOF controller. I'm pointing at things. You can see this ray that's coming off of the controller itself, a little cursor to show me where I'm pointing. And as I click on the individual boxes, I'm going to play that one more time, they change color. Now, the actual hit detection that's going on in here to determine if I'm pointing at a box versus the FPS counter there, that's all done in-app. We're not handling that for you because WebXR doesn't have any concept of the context of your app right now. But everything about how the controller is exposed is pretty unified. Let's go here. Similarly, the production values on this video are great. You can see here that as I'm using this magic window mode of the same scene, I can tap on the individual boxes and I'm getting that same exact ray, I'm getting the same exact events. Everything about that mode basically works the same as viewing the same scene in VR. The rendering loop is the same, the input loop is the same. There's like a 2-argument difference between Magic Window and VR in there, and that's the way that we want to make it for as many applications as we can. And honestly, once we get into AR, we'd like to continue as much of that pattern as we can, where it's basically the same thing that you have to do for all of the other, you know, immersive modes, plus 1 or 2 AR specific things. And then to make sure that we have a little bit more expressivity in that fairly simple model, we do track when the primary action starts and ends, and this gives you the ability to do things like click and drag around, or if you have a 6-off controller, you could actually bind it so that you can reach out and grab things Job Simulator style and move them around. And so it gives you a reasonable amount of expressivity for a fairly simple system that works across any device that we can currently conceive of. Now, there is one big significant caveat to it that I've hinted at before, and that is we're only planning on exposing a single button in V1 of the WebXR API per controller, I should point out. This is a big deal, and it kind of sucks, and I apologize for that. The reason for it is mostly just there are native APIs that are in progress right now, specifically OpenXR, that have not completely locked down their own input methods yet. And so we cannot, at this point, design a system for the web that we know with confidence will map cleanly on top of what they're planning. Once we've seen some of the native ecosystem calm down around that, we can expose something better. But for the moment, we want to do the thing that works for as many people as possible immediately and then extend it in the future. We definitely do not plan to be a single button system forever. So finally, the next question that I get asked most of the time is, when can I start using this? And the answer is soon. In fact, today. If you would like to start playing with this API, then you can go into Chrome, Canary, and I think Dev, and very, very soon Beta, and go to About Flags and flip on the Enable WebXR API flag. That exposes everything to you. That will work on mobile with Cardboard and Daydream. It will also work on desktop with a Oculus Rift or HTC Vive, or really any OpenVR compatible device. And this is something that if you're an individual who likes playing on the cutting edge and seeing the latest and greatest, we would really love you to start playing with this and give us feedback about how it's working for you. The entire API is based on developer feedback thus far, but we want to we want a sanity check. We want to make sure that the assumptions that we made about how we can fix things for developers actually hold out, and the best way that we can find that out is to have you complaining to us. So please go out and do it. Similarly, and these slides are actually a little bit old, so the timing doesn't quite work out, but we are spinning up an Origin trial that almost certainly will be in Chrome 67. There's a small chance that that could fall through, but we're pretty sure. And that should be in beta late April, which, hey, it's April. Should be really soon now. And this is if you want to expose WebXR content to actual users. You don't need them to go back and turn on a flag. I know that some of you don't like Origin trials if you've been playing with those for WebVR, and we don't want to stay in the Origin trial phase for nearly as long as we did for WebVR. But it is a great tool to actually get content built with this new API in front of users as fast as possible, so once again, we can get the feedback that we need to feel confident in actually releasing this by default. And that is going to happen basically as soon as we can get through the Origin trial and it goes well. Like, there's still some details that we're working out. We do still plan on changing a few things, but by and large it should be things like naming and maybe which parameters gets passed into which functions. It's not going to be large-scale refactors of the entire API. And so as long as we get enough feedback and confidence that it's working well for people, we want to turn it on as fast as we can, honestly. And we're hoping, I'm hoping, really hoping, that can be near the end of this year. And at that point, it is available to everyone. which is the way it should be. 4 years later, I'm so excited that we're just about to this point. And I cannot thank the crowd here and everybody else who's been working with WebVR and soon to be WebXR enough. You've been a great community, and I can't wait to see what you build. So, again, my name is Brandon Jones. Are we doing Q&A now?
No,
okay, great. I will be around here all night, so come and find me if you have questions, or you just want to see a demo. And with that, we'll move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Diego and Kevin, why don't you get up here and get set up? So yeah, 4 years. And it may be finally really happening this year, which is something I've not said every year for the last 22 years. But anyway, Brandon, thank you. I hope you guys got his contact info. Apologies, we do not have enough time for public Q&A, so hit people up on the side if you need to now. I don't know if you're staying throughout the networking time, Brandon, or want to get a jump on the commute, but if you're going to be here, then, you know, if we get through this fast enough now, we'll have, you know, ample hour-ish to have networking, so we wanted to do it that way instead. All right, so while these guys set up, tonight is a lot about browsers. We just heard not only from one of the spec editors and creators of this technology, but someone who works on a browser. One of the wonderful things about the web is you don't have to pick one technology solution. You can run on multiple environments, which includes this wonderful piece of software called a browser. And we're actually going to hear from three other makers of browsers tonight, including the next one. Are you guys set up? Yes.
Getting there.
Getting there? Yes. All right. Nobody told me about this. There's going to be a live demo happening of this awesome new browser by the makers of A-Frame, who were formerly at Mozilla, and now they've started their own startup called SuperMedium. So I'd like to have a warm welcome for Kevin and Diego.
Thanks, Tony. All right. Yeah, thank you for coming. Yeah, Kevin and I work at Mozilla for 4 years, just on the other side of the wall, behind the kitchen. Yeah, that's true. Like, I feel like at home. Just a piece of history. Actually, you are sitting where WebVR was born. Like 4 years ago, as Tony and Brandon were saying, like Josh and Vladimir Vukovic called me to join a meeting, and Vlad told us, hey, I have this Firefox build with this API that allows any website to communicate with a VR headset. And at the time, I was using a Node package called Node Oculus that was creating an endpoint, a WebSocket endpoint, to pass the tracking data to a website. And after that meeting, I dropped everything I was doing and and joined the revolution. And yeah, Kevin and I, you probably know us online from A-Frame. We help maintain A-Frame. And now we are going to officially present our new baby called SuperMedium. Okay, you're running? Did you test it before? You tested it before? The Vive headset was running?
Yeah. No tracking.
All right, I'm going to stall for time. So we built SuperMedium. It's a virtual reality browser. It's a fully VR browser. So that means you go into a browser and there's no 2D UI at all. There's no like typing in URLs in the URL bar. You go in and you're completely in VR and you stay in VR. So we started building this in December, mid-December, and we launched it end of January. So that was about 1.5 months from start to launch. And yeah, so now we've been launched for a couple months. It's good. Do you have a sync cable?
I think it's working.
All right.
Drop me SuperMedium. So yeah, SuperMedium is already available on Steam, and that's exclusive news for this venue. We are going to be available also on the Oculus Store as soon as Thursday. So right now, you have all you WebVR developers. You have a channel to actually deliver WebVR content on the major stores, like both Steam and Oculus. Yeah, so.
Oh, you lost it. I think it's like only in this area. Oh, you're good. All right, so you just pretty much launch it from Steam and you're in VR. So, and there's cool things about this is about doing your own browser is that you can kind of get rid of the 2D cruft. So we can do things like we can default to the native, the discrete graphics card. So the things we do when you have a laptop, you have to like switch the graphics card stuff. We work around that. You good? I think it's like we need like a sync cable.
No, the headset is tracking. I don't see my hands. Are the hands the controllers like tracking?
So we're on channels A and B. Is that correct for wireless?
Yeah, I think
B and C. B and C. We're on A and B. Oh.
no, the headset is tracking fine, or it was tracking fine.
The only ones going on at that time.
B and C. Oh, okay. Click something. It's good?
Yeah, we are good. I
Do
don't
it.
move too much, so.
I'm doing it live. All right. So we're doing. All right. So one thing we're going to check out first is traversing Sketchfab experiences. You don't know, Sketchfab is a repository for VR and 3D models. And you don't know, you can actually view them in VR. So
You need to see open the menu or one of the individual experiences?
just look for one. I think it's last page. Was
Yeah,
it?
I'm gonna show you my favorite one. That is a 3D recreation of a Van Gogh.
Yeah. So Van Gogh
So it's
painting in 3D.
full.
Yeah.
One click, and
And then guess Wi-Fi, and then Sketchfab takes like a few seconds to load. So he just clicks on it, he just waits a few seconds, and then he's in VR. And we actually add music to some of these to make it more like interesting, because it's not fun without sound. Yeah, we add in the sound, curation work. Yeah. Not as a user, but we do it ourselves. But in the future, maybe you can hook up a Spotify account.
yeah, like sound helps out for immersion, and for the websites that don't have sound, we just add it.
All right, it's a lot cooler in VR. But so the cool thing is that once you're in SuperMedium, you look around a bit, you can go back and go to something else. So normally you would take off your headset and go to a different URL, but Diego just kind of holds down the button, and now you can move on to the next experience. Try doing a turnaround. Optical sync. I think you're.
Yeah, it's kind of purple.
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
We just kind of lost it.
Yeah, we filled
I
that.
think Steam VR died. Optical sync. How do you view it once you're? Oh, all right. All right, go quick. Next one. So he jumped out of the experience and nothing happened, and then he's going on to the next one. So try the Sherlock one.
Yeah, the Sherlock.
Right there, top middle.
I can go from the Van Gogh painting to a recreation of the
BBC Sherlock.
Sherlock apartment from the
211B. something like that.
TV series.
221 Baker Street. Yeah. By Arcologic. I think they're in the WebVR space too.
How is the Wi-Fi doing?
Not great.
Diego, what do you see when you're loading the circle of focus indicator?
He's still in super medium. He sees like a throbber. So if you get bored of waiting, you can hold down the button and go back.
Yeah, that's too slow. I'm gonna go back.
Normally you would be able to.
Oh.
So while he waits, how does the super medium timeline become?
The timeline? What do you mean?
The list of stuff to see.
Oh, so the list of stuff is we manually curate it, and we sometimes we actually work with developers to fix it up. We like do all the thumbnails and the logos and the descriptions and all that stuff. He's just in the apartment right now, so he doesn't. So he doesn't really like to a user. They wouldn't really know they're in a web browser. It's just kind of like 3D content that kind of looks native, and he can teleport around and explore.
Yeah, so to answer your question, we manually curate right now because this content actually is about natural things. So there's all of the yeah. So when I make sure that all the content is accessible.
Yeah. So the whole goal is we want to get there early, and we want to bring all this good content to users that have headsets today. So like if you want to build like a platform, it's nice to have users to get their feedback and iterate on top of that. So that's why we want to be on Steam, we're on Oculus to get actual users. So pop out of that one and try something else.
We make a check on performance. So we actually the fact that we're going to be on the Oculus Store is the living proof that actually WebVR is performant enough. We pass all the performance requirements they have.
Oh, is that Lily's now? Yeah. So yeah, can you I think that's yeah, it's right there. So this is one like a 3D animated video done by Sketchfab, and it's like a little short, kind of like Pixar-like. This it usually loads pretty quickly when on the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
Yeah, it's only animated. It's a good thing. Like Sketchfab is expanding the content not only to host like 3D models, but they have like pieces of storytelling like this one and interesting stuff to see and explore. Not just like rotating a 3D model in front of you.
Yeah.
It's worth the wait.
Oh. It just went on away. Wow. A playlist, we could. Right now we're working on that you can make your own collection. So if you're a developer, you can add like your own collection and demo it all at once to someone, something like that. Yeah.
The animation is not playing, it's kind of static.
Yeah, I think it might be still reloading, but usually it's a little, everything's animated. May have to click or something.
This girl like running around and this dragon. No, it's
Oh, yeah, Sketchfab just changed that. Before it defaulted to animated. So those are the type of things that like our browser can kind of hack around and.
cool. Now I'm gonna go back.
No. It just started to play, but okay. Okay. If you want to see the fun part, you should try it yourself. Yeah, click on the search bar, see if it works. It doesn't. I think we updated A-Frame, and then it might have broke it, so just a task for tonight.
Yeah, we start like with Sketchfab, and we are like indexing content from Sketchfab and Matterport, and we have the order of thousands of experiences already. You can access to Super Medium, so we added like a small search functionality where you can search content with text besides
Yeah.
planning on the thing.
Yeah, look into that. Yeah, just email us. Yeah. So we've been adding stuff that people have been submitting us. So try the Jellyface. That one someone emailed us like that last week.
Those are the kind of things that the web is perfect for. So this is a kind of a fun experience that you consume in a minute. But it was hard to justify, to convince someone to install.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's jump into it. This one is 3GS. So yeah, so like normally applications on Steam, they're on the orders of hundreds of megabytes to gigabytes large, and usually these load in a couple of seconds. And you don't have to wait for them to install. You don't have to like download it. So we really lowered the barrier to entry to try out VR apps, and as a result, users are more open to trying out lots of little bite-sized content. Try again.
Soundboxing was on the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, we work with Eric, creator of Soundboxing.
Yeah, try the thumbnail on the UR bar. Yeah, you stay in the headset. Hey, 2 minutes, all right.
Yeah.
We got 15 minutes.
Do you play Soundboxing?
All right, yeah, so we worked with Eric to do soundboxing, and we built it in less than a week, and we launched it. He's still working on it. It's kind of soft launch, but maybe you can try that. Maybe I'll just click the button for you. Oh, hey, Eric. Just go back and try soundboxing. Wash.
Kevin, there was another question about what other devices you're supporting.
Right now it's Vive and Rift and kind of Windows mixed reality. And as more headsets we come out, like the Santa Cruz, we'd love to be on those. And right now we're just kind of focusing on getting on the Oculus Store.
Yeah, we said that.
AR, like the Meta 2 or something like that?
Yeah, once they're like more consumer ready, we'll start looking at AR headsets, which might be years. I think.
Right now the baseline is 6 tracking and controllers. We think is where the potential of
Yeah.
is, what makes VR special.
Click the, so we have like a 10-second timeout if it doesn't enter VR. No, down there, yeah. If it doesn't enter VR in 10 seconds, we give you a message. So this is, maybe Eric can come talk. So it's a music boxing game. You said you just push out an update? Oh.
Wi-Fi is kind of slow.
Yeah, so this is like a music rhythm boxing game based off Eric's Soundboxing on Steam, and he has like people like punch to the music, and it creates these beats, and these beats, he has an API available that's from the web client, and yeah, loading the models. Yeah, and it looks like kind of like the native game, and like we had Ken Bai try it, and he said it almost looks as better than the native one, so it's pretty cool. Oh. You have hands? Yeah, play. Yeah, usually I guess your hands aren't showing, but.
I only have one controller.
Do you see your hand? All right. Yeah, so there's like hundreds of songs, thousands of songs to play out, and so our switch out. All right. Yeah, so our vision is just to have like just kind of millions and billions of interconnected websites that are all like very seamlessly navigatable and just provide a seamless experience and just kind of provide a platform for developers who are developing VR content today to distribute their content to users today on Steam and Oculus.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Try it at home, and any feedback, team@supermedium.com.
And we're also around on A-Frame too. So
Yeah.
cool. Later.
Yeah.
Thank you, Diego and Kevin from Supermedium. I always panic when somebody says, I want to do a live demo, but I know that Diego would dance, so it all
Yeah.
works out at the end of the day.
It's always fun. It's quirky, but it's quite fun.
So we're queuing up the video here now. We're going to introduce one of our speakers who's calling in from San Diego. He's actually one of my colleagues here at Mozilla working on the Creators and Coders team. We recently went to Sundance together to talk about VR for film, so super exciting. And he's actually written a really cool little bio, so I'm going to read that off to you and embarrass you, Dan, a bit. So Dan Brown works at Mozilla, open source, nonprofit company, with creators and coders to build awesome things for the open web. He's also a creator, developer, homebrewer, runner, sock enthusiast, beard evangelist, writer, drummer, adventurer, Oxford advocate, and Swiss Army knife. So with that, I'm going to introduce you to my colleague Dan Brown to talk about Firefox Reality.
All right. I'm assuming everyone can hear me. I can't see anyone there, so I'm assuming it's also a great audience here, or a great group here. Let's see, is my screen shared? Great. My name's Dan. I work on a team at Mozilla that is focused on working with creators and coders. And so a large part of what I do is I sort of singing the praises of all the benefits that comes to using the web and the open web to deliver mixed reality, deliver augmented reality and virtual reality. So I know that if I did that here, I would be preaching to the choir. So if I start sounding like too much of a marketer, I apologize. It's what I do all day, but I know here everyone already knows about all the great benefits that comes to using the web to deliver these sort of immersive experiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through some of the things that Firefox has been, or Mozilla has been doing recently around mixed reality, around WebVR and XR. Just kind of give an update. I'm going to be talking about people who are, all the people that are doing way smarter than me and all the stuff they're doing. So I'm just going to start running through a few things here. So first off, Firefox Reality. This is something that we announced a couple weeks ago, and this is where Mozilla is going to be bringing Firefox to standalone augmented and virtual reality headsets. And so we're excited about this. It's we've got it working. It's going to be out on some headsets soon. But this is something where we identified that there's a lot more dedicated augmented and virtual reality headsets coming out. This, and so we have a great team that's put together that is focused on creating a browser specifically for these platforms. These platforms where it's not necessarily your phone, it's not your computer, it's these headsets that stand alone by themselves. They have a variety of different inputs, and so we're focused on making sure it's cross-platform. That we're Mozilla, so we're making sure it's open source, so it's easy for manufacturers to add. That there's a level of transparency there. That it's privacy focused, and this is a really interesting thing, right? I mean, what does privacy look like in this medium? What does privacy look like for virtual reality? And we don't have all the answers yet, but it's something that we have conversations on every single day. We have a lot of ways that we are going to explore where we can make sure that privacy is a focus in this new medium. So, we're committed to finding the solution. This is built off of using our experience with Firefox Quantum, and so we're using that to build a sort of best-in-class browser for mixed reality headsets, and it's built for the future. And what I mean by that is, we've got a lot of people building browsers here, and we're all sort of looking at the same questions, like how do you type? How do you express emotions? Do you even type? How do you view the billions of existing, 2D web pages that are out there, and how do you communicate? And this is why I sort of keep saying that, this is like the Wild West again, where everyone's sort of figuring out how do you engage in this new medium. So, everything's new again, and so it means that there's a lot of room for experimentation. There's a lot of room for trying things and failing at things and to finding those right answers. And so, at least when it comes to Firefox Reality, we've identified a few, major components that we're going to put our work behind for this first version. The first one is environments, and so. In virtual reality, as opposed to augmented reality, you put on a headset, there's nothing there, it's empty, it's sparse. And so, we'll have, at least at first, a couple of default environments that you can be inside, and then open it up to allow other people to create environments. So at least there's a sense of familiarity or, comfort that can be there when, as opposed to if you're just like in darkness or a sort of, Tron sort of environment or something like that. Or maybe if you prefer Tron, maybe that's one of the environments. Next up is Windows. And so we have a, large interest in making sure that you can access the 2D web as well. What does that look like? And this isn't anything too new. This is something that we've seen in a lot of, virtual reality interfaces, but, still making sure this is one of the main components that we work with, and using, a lot of the decades of web compatibility investments that we've used in Firefox's Gecko rendering and, renderer, and, and wrapping in a user interface that works and is familiar for virtual reality, and using that for input as well. The tray is something, again, maybe not completely new, but something that we're using for Firefox Reality. This is a place that can be, your workbench, your dashboard. It can be used to open up new windows, to edit settings, to have quick access to things that you're looking for. It's a place to orient yourself, in the web while browsing. And finally, something I find that's pretty interesting is that, you can have this thing, I think they're calling it the sigil, where it's something that's unique to you. You create it, you design it. It's something that this artifact that is unique to you, because when you're browsing in virtual reality, it's a whole nother medium where someone can do something malicious. They can put something there that's meant to look like a password, place on your password, but really it's capturing information. And how do you get around that? So if there's something that's familiar to you or unique to you, it can be something that can be used to identify the fact that you are truly inside the Firefox Reality UI. It's something you can trust, and it's something that you can feel safe for private information or passwords or things like that. So I'm going to share this deck out afterwards. I'm not sure where, but hopefully Sandra can help me with that. But I'd encourage you to click through some of the links here and learn more, and keep an eye out, because this will be launching on headsets soon, and hopefully we can get it into your hands and start trying out for it and building for it. Next up, something at least maybe everyone here is familiar with it, maybe they're not, but something that we've been working on. In the past, and presently we work on something like A-Frame, because we're super interested in making sure it's even easier for people to build content for WebVR, for WebXR, and so something that we have here that's been working on is what we call the Unity WebVR exporter, and Unity is an extremely popular way to create VR and AR, immersive experiences. And so we identified that, if we can make it easier for, people who build for Unity to take that content and bring it on the web, it's a win for everyone. And so we have an early version of what we call that, the exporter. It's available right now on the Unity store. If you build for Unity or you're interested in building with Unity, I would encourage you to sort of click that link to check it out. And it's being actively developed. I mean, I think we just pushed out an update that allows for better camera controls, for keyboard and mouse controls. There's versions being pushed out all the time. They're definitely listening to feedback, the team that's building it here. And so I'd encourage you to check that out, especially if Unity is something that you're interested in. Something else that Mozilla is working on, I can't speak too much on it, but because it's not out yet. But social, we're very, very interested in using the web to enable and accelerate access to mixed reality-based communication. If virtual reality, if augmented reality is a large future, it's a big part of the future of how we interact with each other. We want to be focused on, creating tools and access to, that type of communication. And so if that's something you're interested in, especially as it pertains to, using the browser for this, using WebVR, I would highly encourage you to check out the social channel on the WebVR Slack, or you can just follow the Mozilla Mixed Reality blog. There's going to be some announcements very soon. We're pretty excited about this, and I think people here would be pretty interested in it, so you can check that out. Moving on to at least what I'm a little more comfortable and familiar with, a lot of the work what I do is, there's a lot of really smart engineers and creators at Mozilla that are creating the technology to enable this, and something I'm very focused on is them finding the creators to build with that. And so, proving it out to get people to create something that inspires other people to create something, and so that, a year from now and 5 years from now, that there's just this rich ecosystem of amazing mixed reality content on the web. And I'm sure that there are people, here, in that Mozilla room, here, there at Mozilla right now that are creators and have, things that they're either creating, they have ideas to create, and I'd love to talk to you. But to that end, I actually have a video that we just shared yesterday based on our experience going to Sundance and talking with creators and filmmakers, and talking about virtual reality and augmented reality as a medium that filmmakers and storytellers are moving into. And I'd love to show that video right now. So I'm not sure if it's queued up, but maybe we can show that video right now.
Welcome to We Are the People. Really excited to have an incredible panel to talk about the democratization of this incredible medium called virtual reality. Today at We Are of the people at the panel here with Mozilla and Emblematic and Sundance. It was about launching a whole new way of accessing the tools of production and access for audience to web VR, which is going to be the democratizing force in terms of immersive media.
What we decided to do was have a way to introduce this new platform and a piece that I was calling Mother Nature. And the idea is, what's the nature of women in tech? And we were filming people in green screens, and then we're going to take that material, we drop it straight into the volumetric VR, and everybody will have a browser-based link that they can just load it and walk around.
It's important for creativity to drive the technology. The technology is kind of blind. It's like it'll just get stuck in an engineering loop, and it's important for creativity to guide. And so when we're all together and we're bouncing ideas around,
you are looking at the impact you're going to have in the world, right? Is there an intervention? Is there something that you can do that changes the way that we think about something or the way we behave? And my experience at Sundance is that that's what's happening with film and storytelling, and that's the same thing that we do at Mozilla.
The thing that I love about Mozilla and the thing I love about Emblematic that connects with the spirit of what Sundance is the spirit of independence. And the fact that they are working with artists like Noni de la Peña to find a way to further that independence in this medium, like that's golden.
I think artists and technologists have this imperative to create. There's something that doesn't exist in the world, and we want to see it there. You have it in your head, and now you make it real.
So, I mean, the reason why I share that video is because, and again, I know I might be preaching to the choir here, but we're at a huge tipping point. Not have the ability to put these great immersive experiences on the web, but the tools are there to create it. And what we're seeing is that people who are used to creating stuff for video or installation art or all these things are now looking to the web and looking and being like, can I make these virtual reality experiences and share them through there? And so we're starting to see amazing new things being made. And Mozilla wants to help accelerate that. And we want to, I'm personally interested in finding those creators and seeing, can we partner with you? Can we, what's missing? Can we help you create more, and move this forward? And so, but the reason why I share it is, like, at the very end of this, I'll have my email up here. I know I'm not there to talk to people in person, but if you are creating something, if you have an idea to create something, if this is something you're interested in, I would love to chat. Let's build something together. Let's prove this out. Let's make some really awesome stuff. And that's what I'm primarily interested in. So if you have, if you want to learn more, I shared some links already, but mixedreality@mozilla.org. We'll be updating that soon. It's a little outdated, but there's going to be some great new information that goes up there soon. But some of the more recent stuff, you can go to blog.mozvr.com. And that has a lot of is the most up to date with a lot of things that we're working on specific to VR, to AR. And so, if you want to see what's going on or even catch some of the announcements that will be coming around just around the corner, check it out. And finally, if you have questions or if you want to chat, if you have something you're creating, I would love to hear it. So my email is on the screen. So you can just kind of jot it down or find Sandra and let's talk. But that's all I got.
So good. Thank you, Dan. That was really great. And a great reminder that this really is all about the content and the user experiences at the end of the day. As engineers, we're here to facilitate all that. This is just a fabulous video. While Michael's getting set up, I have a question for the audience. What was the first web VR browser to ship commercially? Who knows? Who's what? Wrong! Anyone else got an idea? Samsung Internet. Samsung had released the first VR browser. I mean, all the great companies that are here have been working diligently on these specs, working on their own products, on their own timelines. Samsung got out there, kind of leapt ahead, thought more about sort of just initially let's get a user experience out there, let's suck the web into this, less about specs and more about just sort of getting something into people's hands on the most popular and mobile platform for VR, the Gear VR. Arguably one of the most downloaded and installed apps in VR in general. Maybe you can speak to the numbers, Michael, but 1 million-ish people have installed this browser, I think. And so Michael Blix is here from Samsung to tell you all about that, Samsung Internet, if we can get it up on the screen.
Do we have any engineers here?
We do have some engineers here. We have our AV engineer specialist who's going to come and help you. Yes, thank you. So, from Samsung, on the Internet Browser team, working on the VR browser, Michael Blix.
I'll just start with this. Originally, Winston Chen from our Boston office, who works on our VR browser, working on a lot of AR concepts. He was going to fly out. He got a little flight delayed. He was going to give you a great presentation on AR stuff, so I'm just filling in at the last moment. But what he was coming out for was our Create conference this Thursday and Friday. It's a great event. It's our first conference our kind of Samsung web team is putting on. We have like a huge number of great people, great speakers coming, all-day event. So we just, if you have time this Thursday, Friday, you're not doing anything, you want to meet tons of great people, hear tons of great content on like everything web, not just web VR, but web AR, which Winston will be talking about, Bluetooth, IoT, everything. A lot of great stuff. If you go to SamsungCreate.com, you can see our schedule and our speakers. Really great event. And we also have, let me go to our last page. We do have a code just for you. WebXR, 100% off. That's a pretty good deal. Pretty great event. If you have any questions, Damon's been planning this for the last 6 months, and a lot of work there, but it's going to be all worth it this Thursday and Friday. So I'm Michael Blix. Hearing Brandon talk about 4 years, it's taken a while. I remember moving out here 4 years ago. I knew VR would be the place out in the Bay Area, and one of the first exciting things I saw was Brandon's web VR build of the browser of Chrome, and also Vlad's Firefox build. That was the most exciting thing, and I knew I wanted to kind of go that direction. So let me just show you something I was working on kind of right off the bat. I was interested in kind of these immersive UIs. So this is something I did, 3.5 years ago. So this is all in kind of WebGL. This is a little sample of...
We spent the last year working on building Developer Kit 2.
Don't need audio for this. So this is kind of textures in WebGL. You can see I got scrolling here, kind of made it as a mock-up. I wanted to see what a VR browser would be like right off the bat. So you have video playing on the side here. Let me zoom ahead a little bit. Kind of text entry. Let's see. You have kind of multiple layers here on the side. This is something I'm still interested in. If you want to talk about how we can use non-kind of web VR or WebGL technology, use CSS to bring VR experiences to life, that's something I'd want to talk to you about. So this is what I was doing concept-wise, and kind of a few hops. I ended up at Samsung about 2.5 years ago, kind of right before we came out with our own browser. They were very interested. We had the Gear VR headset. We wanted to bring the web to that, so we created our Samsung Internet Gear VR browser. So if you're not familiar with it, we have our kind of Gear VR headset you can put your phone into. And one of the applications on there we made was Samsung Internet for Gear VR, which is a port of our mobile browser into VR. So this is kind of what it looks like. You have your kind of screen in front of you. You can enter addresses. And it makes kind of like the Firefox mixed reality team I was talking about, makes the 2D web accessible in VR. So you can go to YouTube, you can play your 360 videos, you can access all that existing content. So another part of kind of VR and the web is, one thing we did was added kind of video support. So you can directly have an HTML5 video tag and add a little kind of format attribute to say it's a 360 video footage, and now it kind of directly supports viewing 360 videos inside the VR browser. I'm going to just skip some of those things. We're very privacy focused. This is kind of a recent feature we added later last year as a secret mode, so everything's kind of very as private as you want, since that's a very kind of critical use case for us. So just to give you some updates we've been doing recently. In the last 9 months, kind of 9 months ago, we had a significant kind of web VR performance increase. That's something we're continuing to work on. And since we are Chromium-based, which is the basis of the Chrome browser, we are going to be able to add kind of WebXR support as that gets built out, thanks to kind of Brandon's work and the team there. Let's see, the video. And this spring, we added kind of navigation support for the VR activation event. So this is something we're experimenting with also. This is a demo. You'll see it transition to another web page and immediately go into the next experience. We're still experimenting on the UI for what happens in that transition period. There's obviously security concerns. Maybe that sigil thing, that Firefox Mixed Reality would be a very good idea. Right now oh, you don't like that guy? Next, oh, got to turn off the autoplay there, sorry. Let me add that to watch later, but okay. Okay, so we had our VR browser, and we had a background. We made a static background. Kind of an immediate, obvious idea was to make that changeable, so we did that from the UI. But also, we wanted to make it changeable from the kind of web developer perspective. So we did a little JavaScript API on that. We got some usage data on that, experimentation-wise, and it works pretty well. Kind of a little simple call, window.samsung_change_sky, and you can give it, you know, either six images for a skybox or various formats for like a 360 image, and your skybox changes. I think that was kind of pretty cool. A lot of other kind of browser vendors have kind of like that idea. And so one thing we want to do in the near future is submit a proposal to the kind of immersive web community group. So there's this proposals repo as part of the group. It's not just kind of WebGL based, but there's these other proposals kind of existing there. There's actually some cool kind of AR concepts already there. So very soon we'll submit a proposal to kind of standardize that. We'll probably take out the Samsung part of the kind of API string there. And that's kind of it I have today. If you have any questions, please stop by. If you have CSS plus VR or something, I'm kind of prototyping on the side. So if you have any ideas or questions about that, I'd love to talk about that. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Michael. Thanks very much. Okay, so we got about another hour in the space, and here's what we're going to do. In a second, Damon's going to throw the mic around. We have a throwable mic, so we can have announcements if anyone wants to raise their hand. Once again, I want to thank Sandra. She needs to leave a little bit early. Thank you for hosting tonight, Sandra. And
thank you.
Big round of applause. Shout out to Mark in the AV room who's been keeping this thing going. Thank you, Mark, our producer here. And I just want to point out one other thing. We've heard from 4 people making browsers tonight, 4 different companies, but there are 2 more. Oculus is working on one, and Microsoft's working on one. So think about that. And probably this will all shake out to be a smaller number of that someday, but this is amazing. There's all this innovation going on that centers on this one common API set that we're working toward and driving toward, and we're trying to ship products to. But just let that sink in while we're going here. So Damon, why don't you? Does anybody have any announcements here? It's community time. We're going to spend just a couple of minutes. Quick announcements on something you got going of interest to this group. Don't take too long. Aaron.
Hey, what's up? My name is Erin. I'm one of the co-founders of AR VR Academy. We teach AR VR to women in underrepresented communities. Amazing talks today. I am co-editing a book with O'Reilly Media. Myself, Steve Lucas from San Diego, and Vasant Mohan are working on this project. Hopefully, royalties from this book go back to a women's VR hardware fund, because access to that is pretty tough. If you're interested in contributing a chapter on anything related to cross-platform development, how augmented reality works, please talk to me. I'm focusing on AI and CV, so computer vision and AI. Please talk to me, or you can tweet at me at Aaron Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Nick, why don't you get up here and get set up while we're doing this? Any other announcements from folks? Come on, don't be shy. That's it?
Give me an excuse to throw this. Come on.
Yeah, no, we want to throw this thing out. Karen.
Hello. So one of my side projects is working with a small startup called Decentraland, and they'll be releasing an SDK in the next week for folks to be able to create VR experiences on that are powered on the Ethereum blockchain. So check that out at decentraland.org, and we'll make that announcement probably in the next week or so.
Yeah. All right, Kieran. And any more announcements here? I see. Okay, there we go.
That's a weird spot to throw.
All right.
So Decentraland is an Ethereum project, and I'm very interested in cryptocurrencies myself. So if you guys want to talk about WebVR and crypto assets, please find me after. Thanks.
Blockchain.
Hey there. Quick announcement from the WebXR group itself, which is that we have some pretty darn talented people on this crew. Tony, Damon, Sandra, Kieran, but we don't know everything in the world about all the cool stuff that's out there. So we're going to be doing this on a regular basis. There will be future events. And, you know, where's the next Josh Carpenter going to come from? Maybe you know, and we don't, you know? So let's...
British Columbia, maybe?
But so just be in touch with us, please. That's what we would appreciate as a form of gratitude, is keep in touch with us about where you think we should go next. Thank you very much.
Well said, Christopher. Any other announcements real quick? Okay, with that, we have a couple of lightning talks ready to go. But before we do those, I want to reemphasize what Sandra talked about with our code of conduct. It's on the website. If you're having any issues, Sandra has to leave a little early. Like I said, Damon and I are around. Come to us if there's the next hour. With that, I want to introduce Nick from 3Data for the first lightning talk. Nick.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Tony. I appreciate the invite as well. I mean, we've been big fans of all the innovation that's been going on in WebVR for quite some time, so it's nice to finally be out here. We're actually based out of Austin, Texas. Recently relocated to San Mateo, and was just enthusiastic when we got the invite to come here because this is where all the cool shit happens here. So we're glad to be part of the community now. So the company that I co-founded with my co-founder over there, Tyler, is called 3Data. A little bit of background, we were previously DataVis VR, and we're building an application for data visualization in the Unreal Engine. And we quickly found out that first, it wasn't scalable, and second, we should build this on the web. I got to meet Mark Pesce about 2 years ago, and I showed him what we were doing, and he immediately was like, that should be WebVR. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know what WebVR is. And he was like, just check it out. It's early, but it's going to be great. So we immediately kind of saw the light, and we're like, we have to refactor everything. Let's rebuild this. And we started to see the community really start to adopt the technology. And where it is now is it's cool to see because we've been big fans of what everyone's building. So a little bit about our platform. It's a virtual reality data visualization platform. We've been using a lot of the new technology in A-Frame to be able to build a multi-user collaborative data visualization platform and really solve some problems that a lot of enterprises are facing. We're one of the very few enterprise VR companies, and I think we might be one of the only WebVR enterprise companies. But we're getting a lot of traction with some companies who are really interested in the technology. Bear with me, I have my Boost VC deck with me, so I didn't bring a short deck. I have pitch day on Thursday. So currently, we're looking at data visualization like this in 2 dimensions. Previously, I was a data analyst with Nike and had to look at data all day. I love data, but it was infuriating when you had hyperdimensional data that you're trying to visualize and then communicate it. So we wanted to solve this problem, and immediately, we started to think, what if we could visualize this in virtual reality? We're both big fans of aliens, so we wanted to build something that kind of looked like this. And we were like, let's just be inside the data and be able to reach out and grab it. We're not quite there, but that's kind of what we're going for. What we have now is a collaborative data visualization environment. We're using a lot of interesting components that the community's built right now. We have about 350 companies using this to date. So over the past 2 years, we've gotten a lot of interest from huge enterprises who are interested in collaborating and visualizing their data in all sorts of interesting graph types. So we're really enthusiastic about where this technology is going. We've been waiting on a couple browsers to kind of adopt the technology. But my man, we're waiting. But, it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. We're huge believers in this. We have another kind of big announcement is we're going to be speaking at Microsoft Build. We have been building the application for the HoloLens. We quickly found out that executives hate to put on VR headsets. So data scientist loves it. Executive won't even touch it. So we had to rethink how we were going to go about this. And, AR was kind of the way that we saw this going. So with the new RS4 update, we're doing some really interesting stuff with the HoloLens. And actually have a Vive Focus here if we can get maybe another person in this room, a browser loaded on it. We can start to really connect these devices that people, aren't used to really being able to have untethered. So it's a really exciting time for us. Just to kind of end that, not raising money here. My name is Wallen Wallace-I. A lot of people know me as Nick. We are 3Data. I did want to formally introduce one of my new kind of team members here, William Murphy. Everybody kind of knows him as the dietitian. He's been contributing to A-Frame for a long time, part of the Virtual Leap Hackathon. I thought it'd be cool for him to kind of meet some of the people that he's been working with. So, Will Murphy.
Thanks, Wallen. I'm very excited to be here. Normally, I just watch with envy from the streaming from Chicago, where I live, but I'm not here for this week. So it's great to be here and see so many faces I normally only know as avatars on GitHub and Twitter. One of the things we didn't talk about with WebVR, we talked about low friction for the users, but we forgot about low friction for the developers. So my background is not as a software developer. I was a data scientist by training. I'm a registered dietitian, and I was working in clinical research. But of course, I fell in love with VR, with the consumer release of it, and got interested in creation. But looking at Unity or Unreal, the learning curve was so high, I was like, I don't have time for that. I'm never going to do it. But then when I learned about A-Frame and being able to make VR content with JavaScript and HTML, I was like, I can do that. Anybody can do that. And so I love WebVR for its low friction for developers, in addition to what it does for users. And so what we've built with 3Data is our enterprise data visualization networked application that's using A-Frame. It's using networked A-Frame. It's using A-Frame physics system, and we have networked physics running. I've built for it a data visualization engine. Do we have any data science folks, data analysts, data engineers in the group? Yes. All right. So we got one guy. We're going to be good friends. So we built a grammar graphics style data visualization engine, which is a very popular way of doing graphics that is unlimited. It's ggplot2 from Hadley Wickham is the most popular implementation of that style of thing. So it's extensible. We can always add more types of graphs, and other third-party vendors can come in and add graphs to our platform too. So great, thanks for having me. Looking forward to talking to a lot of you that I've met for a long time. Thanks.
Yeah, I didn't know if we're supposed to do Q&A or we're supposed to pass on.
Find people later.
All right, find us later. We'll be over here. Thanks a lot, guys.
Amazing.
Appreciate it.
Good job, man. Really excited about 3Data, and it actually brings up, for our last lightning talk speaker, it kind of brings up this idea that this isn't all necessarily about consumer sizzle. That's all fun and well and good, but the two lightning talks we have, which were not so coincidentally arranged by us, were for two companies that are displaying how this technology can actually drive business value. It's not all necessarily about throwing sizzly content into the world and maybe powering it with an advertising model, which is having all kinds of fun in the world of today and social media. So it's nice to talk about other things that have business models that can operate in the enterprise, in small businesses, in places where this technology for visualization can drive real value. And so with that, are you actually set up there, Jason?
Just got to tell it not to extend the display. So, I believe I am.
Okay, yeah, he's hooked up. So our last speaker, another lightning talk, Jason Marsh, founder of Flow.
Oh. And I got to give a little bit of credit to Tony. He was my first contact in the VR world about 3 years ago. Before he was at Unity, before he was at Weaver, he started a company called Third Eye, which Mike Blix and I worked on that with him for about 6 months. It was a great time. We learned a lot of good stuff. And that was early days. So I'm just teasing. I'm going to show you some projects that Flow has been working on. Flow is a enterprise VR system, specifically built around data visualization, but really about data storytelling. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But the main thing I want you guys to think about is coming to our alpha launch event next week. And if you want to find out about it, come see me or go to flow.gl alpha launch. You won't actually see it publicized too many places yet. So what are we doing? What are we doing and why are we doing it? So if you, it seems to me that we VR folks have a problem, which is we care but nobody else does. Too many people don't care about VR today. And the enterprise, I think, is the perfect use case for VR. If we can figure out a way to communicate more profoundly, more deeply, in a way that ideas stick in the minds of our audiences, that is a killer use case. I think it's very powerful, and that's what we've been focused on. So I'm just going to jump into the explore mode of a project that we recently did. This was a project that was shown at Davos in the World Economic Forum in January. We did it for Cisco Corporate Social Responsibility. And this part of it, I'm not going to be able to show you all of it, but by the way, this is a full 3D world. One of the things that's important to enterprise is that it works flawlessly and beautifully on a flat screen, as well as in VR. VR is fabulous. It touches our spatial brain in a fabulous way, but enterprise wants stuff that works on a flat screen as well. So let me show you the content a little bit, and then we'll go from there. So they have a system, or they worked with, in this case, Gartner, to take a look at digital readiness around the world. And in this case, so we've just got a choropleth. We're actually kind of in the middle of the world as we explore around. And what is a digital readiness score? It's the sum of all of these different components. Each component, you can get a little bit more information about why these components exist. You know, what they're looking at. But to see a country, in this case Ethiopia, that they're here at the bottom of the digital readiness, and where are they on each of these components? Their technology infrastructure is horrible. There's a whole bunch of surprises that you find right away with a system looking at data this way. So we're a distributed organization. I've got 2 coders in Russia and 1 in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan? I mean, I'm an American. I don't know much about Kazakhstan. Maybe you guys do. But take a look at this. Technology adoption score in Kazakhstan is like top 15 in the world. Why? In the Soviet days, there was a lot of oil extraction in Kazakhstan. They also have a very large percentage of their population is in one city, Almaty, even though it's a great big country. Look, I mean, it's like as big as all of Europe combined, right? So understanding for world leaders at Davos to be able to see where their country fit and understand where to move, where and how to move their country farther up the scale. Another aspect of the system is that, and the way they used it there a lot was as speaker support. So you actually want to put together a series of slides. So it doesn't feel just like data visualization, which is very important. I love data viz. I'm a data viz guy. You guys are awesome. But data storytelling and data communication seemed like a much better, bigger opportunity for us as we were exploring the possible marketplace for this tech. You can see we're actually just going to walk you through organizing the countries into different categories and seeing where an organization would need to focus. Now that's only half of the project. The other half was around the future of work. And instead of walking you through all of that, I'm just going to go straight into explore mode. Basically, they were looking at how are jobs going to change in America based on the effects of automation and AI. And you can see displacement effects, you can see income effects, you can see the net employment. But the part that's really fun is then to see these graphs charted over. In this case, we've got occupations down one category, one side, and industries down the other. As soon as I start to walk you through this, and the narrator would tell you if you were in our narration mode, if you were looking at it at home, you can see that the lower end, lower skilled jobs are here, trucking, manufacturing, and you can see that that lower end is really getting wiped out in terms of the future. You can, of course, interact directly with every category, but the feel, why does VR matter? VR matters when you can get in close and you can see this displacement effects coming down at you all around you. The end result is an idea that's going to touch people's spatial brains and they'll remember, and that's key. So, thank you. So let me show you two other, it's the end of the night. I'm going to go really quick. I'm going to tease you with just a couple other ideas of what we're doing. And one thing that we've been focusing on through the whole company is really trying to understand brain science. How do we make relationships in our brains in a way that our message will stick? Maybe I'm a marketer at heart, even though I'm a coder. I really like this idea that we come up with ideas that stick in the audience's mind. Turns out that marketers love this idea. Luckily, they've been willing to pay us, and it looks like, you know, as a VR company making money, it's a little strange, a little different. We're having fun with that. So this project, basically you're in the middle of the world of thousands of cities, and here we're really using the web. Every city is tied to a Wikipedia page, and for the parts of the world where we have Street View, you can step into it. Why? Why does it matter? We have to keep asking ourselves that. Being able to take a data point and step into it so it becomes not just a statistic, becomes more of a story. We're making more relationships. We're touching the heart and the mind. We're communicating. We're doing things that will stick in the minds of our users, particularly fun. And we also want total control over the data, so we're going to just go ahead and rearrange all the dots. It's fun to be in VR and watch them all rearrange into these great big charts. Our corporate customers love to look up at these big, tall columns because it just feels so different in VR than anything you can do on a flat screen. Of course, we can, you know, fly around. It's all live. I will show you. Kind of fun, right? So I will show you one more, which is kind of an art piece, but I'm kind of proud of it at the moment. One of the things that we think is really important is text. It's very hard to do on the early browsers, but text, a beautiful text engine, I mean on early VR headsets because of resolution, but a beautiful text engine is a powerful thing. So what I've done here is I've created a text sculpture. I just pasted in all of Hamlet. So we're looking at 170,000 characters rendered real time. I created my own font just because I wanted it to have a certain unique feel. So it's, you know, maybe not the most readable, but being in VR and experiencing this sculpture around us, being able to fly through it, especially if you know Hamlet, you get these reminders of important little bits from Hamlet. And I've showed this to someone, Emily Ullman. You know her from the VR AR Association, and she performed in Hamlet years ago, and she was just like so. She starts quoting the lines, and it's very fun for that. One of the things that's particularly fun about this, well, first you can see that the text stays very crisp no matter how close you get to it, and this works on an iPhone 7, on an S7, absolutely seamlessly at 60 frames a second. Which? The text? Is it true? Oh, 3D. Oh, too meta for me to get it. Oh, it is 3D is absolutely the key. So I will stop there because I've taken plenty of your time, but hopefully that was fun to see. And if you want to see how our tool will enable anyone to build this kind of content, come talk to me or come to my launch event next week, our launch event for down at SVR Studio on the 25th. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That's incredible. And don't you just love it that he's solving real business problems? And in the end, Jason took us into the matrix of Hamlet. That was beautiful, amazing text rendering. The presentation portion of the evening is done. We've got about 45 minutes to network in here. We need to be out of here at 9. I think Damon said he wanted to make a couple of quick announcements.
Yeah, I had two, but I got too busy tossing the cube around. So real quick, just the first announcement, announced now, but there are groups around the globe that are actually working on a WebXR week, the last week of June. So this is more for people that would like to present, be involved, things like that. So it's going to be a week of workshops on the different frameworks. We'll probably have a meetup as well, and then there will be a hackathon/challenge at that week that will probably be in more than one location. So, so if you're interested in participating in that, probably more from an organization or setting up, we are following the Virtual Leap and their great stuff. So thank you, Mira and those guys, for kicking that off. The other quick announcement is just to follow up on what Mike said on the Samsung Create. It's a smaller conference. We're following on this our friends from Autodesk who have some pretty good conferences that are more intimate. So this is really a chance for you to not only, one, support it. So we did give you a promo code, but if you decide to get a ticket, we're giving all the proceeds to essentially Code 2040, which focuses on diversity of underrepresented groups and also women who code. So make sure to either sign up or buy a ticket. It's going to a good cause, and you'll have a chance to connect with some of the great people you saw here tonight. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Okay, everybody. Network, go forth and network. We have till 9. Once again, thanks to our sponsors and hosts, Mozilla, BitMovin, Samsung Internet, Mark in the booth. Have fun. Thanks for coming. We'll see you at the next one.